Okay, I think I'm recording. Maybe I'm not. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time you watch this. Tuesday the 30th, we have ACT going on, and so that is interrupting our class. Some of my classes, not all of them. But in an effort to just kind of streamline everything, I'm just making a video for everyone. So I'm just going to try to take 15 minutes of your time just to kind of touch base with you. So I'm going to present my screen. Let's see. Okay. So the directions for Tuesday are very short. We were going to have just a little discussion. And so instead of a discussion, I'm just going to talk to you on this video about these 3 specific things, just kind of giving you a vision of the rest of the year, a few possible interruptions, and then a little bit about the novel. And then you do have an assignment to turn in. You're going to turn in your chapter 1 and 2 questions on Canvas for your assignment. So what's left of the year? I really just want to show you that we really don't have that much. I know you guys are probably done. You're ready to graduate already and just like be done with everything. So I just want to encourage you and inspire you a little bit and just show you really what we've got left. So we've already gone through week 1, and then this week is a bit of a joke because there's only 3 days this week. And so on top of that, today's the ACT, so we don't have, we really have a 2-day week. So this week barely counts. So we don't have school on Friday either because it's Good Friday. So once this week is done, we've got 2 weeks in, and we have 5 left. So I don't think there's any other break, like 3-day weekends in this time period. There's always like a solid month between like Good Friday and Memorial Day. So it looks like there's going to be like 6 or 7 weeks between Good Friday and Memorial Day. And so without those breaks, it's actually going to go really fast. So this 6 weeks has 7 weeks, mostly because this week we're in doesn't really count. So the end of our 6 weeks is May 3rd through the 7th. And then we'll obviously start the last 6 weeks. But what will happen is this will be the last week of the 6 weeks. And then there's actually 1 week in between these 2. And then the AP exam is May 18th at 11. That's what I know right now. So originally our exam was going to be on May 7th, but the AP, College Board has offered 3 different testing windows this year. And so Fort Worth ISD has opted for the second one, which means the AP Literature exam is May 18th at 11 a.m. So if that changes, I will obviously tell you. So everything we're going to be doing this 6 weeks, it's really going to be focused on reading Slaughterhouse 5 and talking about like what the test looks like and doing paper conferences with your writing. So we're not going to be having like our normal regular class meetings. I do want to meet to talk about Slaughterhouse 5 as you read, but you'll be done with this book by the end of the 6 weeks. And then honestly, I haven't posted the dates yet, but the last 6 weeks, the second week in is your exam, and then I'm pretty sure senior grades are going to be due like 2 weeks later. I feel like they usually are due about 2 weeks earlier than everyone else. So we'll have 1 week that's just exam stuff, then your actual exam week, and then 2.5 weeks, and then grades are going to be due for you guys. So the last week of the last 6 weeks, I mean, we're not doing another novel. You'll be done with portfolios, like you'll be done with all of it. So really, I'm just gonna figure out like the actual dates for your, like the due dates for your final grades, and then figure out some interesting things that we can do for our 8th grade. So you still need to do them, but I don't even know what they are yet. My point is that it's not going to be super rigorous or detailed. It's not going to be a bunch of homework. It's really not going to do that. So once you guys have finished the AP exam, you're gonna really be done. And so I just want to encourage you guys because you're really kind of in your last like solid school 6 weeks. Okay. And then there are going to be a few possible interruptions. Like, for example, not today, but Tuesday is the ACT. And then the first week of April, which is next week, there is the STAR test for English 1 and 2. I don't know if I'm going to have to do testing for that. They haven't released like the teacher assignments, but there's a chance I'm going to have to do some kind of participation in that, which just means we're not going to have a class meeting. You'll have things, listed. You'll always have reading till the end of the 6 weeks. So then I think the rest of the STAR exams are like the first week in May, which is the week before y'all's test, and then we'll be in all AP testing for 2 weeks. So that's just the stuff that's coming up. I don't know of any other things right now that would interrupt class, but I just never know what I'm going to have to be involved in. When I was teaching freshmen, I was involved in everything. I don't know why. So they're just kind of used to me being involved. So I don't know what's going to happen. And then finally, Slaughterhouse 5. So I really just want to talk to you kind of about how the novel is kind of set up. So Slaughterhouse 5 is a postmodernist, a postmodern novel. Postmodernist is actually a word, but if we're looking at like chronologically how things have been, Tess actually comes first in the Victorian era, late 1800s. And then we would move into Catcher in the Rye with Holden being in the earlier 1900s, really 1940s kind of time frame. And then Slaughterhouse 5 is coming to us. I would say really the character is probably experiencing like the 60s to 70s maybe. And so chronologically, Tess is the Victorian era, and if you think about her and her story, there's like all these society rules and rules for her economic status, and she's like constantly trying to live up to those rules, and she is constantly a victim of those rules. And so that's interesting because she is trying to follow the rules, and we have this assumption that if we work hard and follow the rules that we will be successful. And that is not what happens for Tess until the very end. She finally truly rebels society's expectations for her, and she kills Alec and runs away with Angel. And then of course she is also punished for that. So that's kind of the Victorian era. But then it evolves into the modern era. And when I say era, what I'm really talking about is like sections of time where there are characteristics and styles that are very typical of that time. And so when they evolve, when those styles and characteristics change, then that era gets labeled. And so there was the Victorian era, and it also is related to the time period. But then we get into the modern era with Holden Caulfield, and his whole story is about him judging like modern society, talking about the hypocrisy of it all the time. And you see him wanting and trying to rebel against that society. And he does at times, and then he also doesn't at times. And I think that's part of his inner conflict, is that he is really torn between actually rejecting, modern civilization and just sort of being complacent and following the expectations. And so he's really divided. And that is a big part of modern writing, is dealing with kind of the traditions. Like, what do we do with it? How do we keep doing it, or we change directions? And then when we get to Slaughterhouse-5, it is postmodern, meaning after the modern era. And postmodern writers, I mean, really, Kurt Vonnegut, our writer for Slaughterhouse-5, is like the quintessential postmodernist writer. He really set the tone for what was going to come after him. He really marks the beginning of the period, and in a lot of ways defines what the postmodernist period of writing looks like. And so for Slaughterhouse-5, it's going to be really tricky if you are not paying attention. This cannot be a book that you can, like, all the time just sort of absentmindedly read. Otherwise, you're going to be confused about what's going on. And that's because, as like a characteristic of postmodern writing, is that what we are used to from traditional writing is a linear storyline. Even if we start at the end and then they flash back to the beginning and tell us the story, that happens. But there's this sense of order and like forward movement with storytelling. And so when we get to postmodern times, like with Kurt Vonnegut, he is redefining storytelling in a lot of ways. And so if you are not paying attention when you're reading, you're going to be a little confused. So a couple things to note on how to approach this story. First, in the first chapter, our main character, Billy Pilgrim, it says that Billy Pilgrim is unstuck in time. Unstuck in time. So that's a strange way to say that he is, in my terms, because I'm a sci-fi nerd, he is time traveling. But is he really time traveling? The point is that if we're looking at time on a single line, we'll have Billy Pilgrim in one spot, like telling a story. But then what will happen is all of a sudden we will be going back in time to like when he was in World War II as a prisoner of war, in being kept in the slaughterhouse, and the bombing of Dresden is going on. And so instead of Billy Pilgrim like sitting and telling us about it, we're actually there with him experiencing it. I kind of think about it now, just because I have grown and I understand things a little bit differently now. I kind of can imagine that these flashbacks, they're different. They feel different than flashbacks because it's not somebody telling the story. I mean, we're in the middle of it, but we're experiencing it with the main character. But it kind of makes me think of PTSD. Like, these memories are kind of haunting him, and he's drawn into them, and it feels very present. But our character is also aware of time in the story, so sometimes he's not sure where he is. And then the story will jump forward where Billy Pilgrim is a different age doing different things. And then something that's also strange is that he will sort of jump even further forward past the present tense into sort of the future, where he is abducted by aliens. And so because of the time, it's not that time doesn't exist, it's just that it is operating a little bit differently than what we are used to. So because we can't totally rely on like a chronology, a constant, consistent forward movement, because we can't. We don't know. Billy Pilgrim is unstuck in time, so he just keeps showing up in different moments of his life, and we get to see it. So what we have to do instead of relying on a timeline to help us kind of understand what's going on, because we instinctively latch on to time as a way to understand and almost categorize information so that we can see these like things evolving. We can't do that with this one. Instead, we want to rely on making associations, which means like this. So Billy Pilgrim is a war vet from World War II, but he was also a prisoner of war, right? So you'll see times where he's being held captive as a prisoner of war, and he'll be in Germany. But then there's also the time in his life where he's been abducted by aliens, the Tralfamadorians. I can't remember the spelling right now. And he is also a prisoner because he's been abducted. And so instead of worrying about the timeline, you should be looking at these experiences that Billy Pilgrim is showing us, and you're trying to look for associations, or in other words, like connections or similarities across experiences. So when he's a prisoner of war in Germany, and when he's been abducted by aliens, are there similar experiences that he is having? Are his captors similar in any way? Is the environment he's kept in, are they similar in any way? And so you're just looking for association. So when you're in these little time pockets of wherever Billy Pilgrim is, you're really trying to look for almost repeated experiences, because then that might help us translate what's really going on with Billy Pilgrim. Is he having like a PTSD breakdown? Is he dealing with Alzheimer's? I mean, or is this a fantastical story where he's been abducted by aliens? And so it can be very tricky if you're not noticing where you are in time, because like if you ignore that component, then you ignore that you're in the midst of a new experience that Billy Pilgrim is showing us. So associations are kind of the thing we want to latch onto. So a few things you want to know is that Kurt Vonnegut, our author, is anti-war. So any kind of big ideas that might pop up that show you like maybe why Vonnegut is anti-war, or specifically maybe, what are some experiences that he went through, like Billy Pilgrim, that he goes through that would make somebody anti-war. And then Kurt Vonnegut's also a postmodernist writer. So anytime you see like the author doing something with the novel that maybe you haven't seen before, like this kind of jumping through time, you might notice some of these characteristics of just postmodernist writing. And then finally, I'll tell you this. Billy Pilgrim is the main character's name, and his last name is Pilgrim. So when you hear Pilgrim, it really should raise a flag for you to make associations. And a pilgrim is somebody who is on a spiritual journey. So anybody could be a pilgrim, because it's a phase of your life where you are on a spiritual journey. So for example, if you are Muslim, you might go on a journey to Mecca, which is their a spiritual, like a sacred temple in Jerusalem. And so while you're on the journey to Mecca, you could call yourself a pilgrim. The same if you're Jewish and you want to go to the temple in Jerusalem and you go on a journey, a spiritual journey, you would be called a pilgrim. You could be called a pilgrim. You don't have to be, but when you hear the word pilgrim, it should raise a flag and cue some associations. And some associations would be like somebody on a spiritual journey. Other associations for me is like, I think of the Canterbury Tales. We read at the very beginning of the year, The Knight's Tale, and all of those people were pilgrims. They were on a pilgrimage to a great cathedral. And they were just telling these stories along the way. I also think of a novel by John Bunyan called Pilgrim's Progress, which is a very Christian story, allegorical story. So anyway, think about those kinds of associations as well. Like, what is this journey that Billy Pilgrim is on? What is this spiritual, centerpiece that he is maybe traveling to? So these are the kind of things you can maybe make associations and look for associations. So there's a chance I will post a video for Thursday as well, just depending on how things go. But otherwise, you need to turn in chapter 1 and 2 questions for Canvas, and there's a good chance you'll turn in chapter 3 and 4 this week as well. So I hope I didn't bore you. I'm going to exit and stop recording. I will see you guys soon. Oh, about paper conferences, I'm going to create a schedule and send out invitations to people who signed up. And then you'll know when we're going to meet, just you and me, about your work. So I will see you guys next time. Stop recording.